Everyone, so glad to be here with you. Today I'm going to be talking about managing the emotions of infertility. I know firsthand just how challenging it can be to walk through that journey of infertility. It's such a roller coaster. My husband and I went through 9 years of infertility before conceiving our older daughter. And I can say without a doubt that it is absolutely gut-wrenching at times. And so, most people go into that experience of infertility, first of all, just being sort of blindsided by the infertility to begin with, but then just are not prepared and not really well supported through that time. So what I would like to do today is share a bit about what's unique about infertility and the emotions that come along with it, as well as some tools and recommendations for how you can support yourself well during this time. First, I'm going to share about the mental health risks of infertility. Studies actually show that infertility can be just as stressful as a potentially terminal diagnosis, such as cancer. And again, most people are not prepared for it being so stressful. Although they experience it internally, you might notice that and then maybe get down on yourself, like, I should not be so stressed about this, or this should not be so painful. The truth of the matter is, it is that painful and it is that stressful. And so you're not imagining that it is as hard as it actually is. You're not being dramatic. It truly is that stressful and that difficult to deal with. Studies vary, but almost always show that there is an increased risk of anxiety and depression during infertility. Infertility also correlates with an increase in postpartum mood and anxiety disorders, which probably seems unfair, like I shouldn't have to go through both of these things, but there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of stress on the infertility side, and many times parents are entering into parenthood already having experienced that stress. Maybe there's additional nervousness or anxiety around whether or not you'll be able to carry to term, or what it's going to be like to be a parent. And then there are also increased risks, like if infertility is the result of a specific health condition, that might contribute to potential anxiety and depression postpartum as well. Infertility also impacts every area of your life: your finances, your emotions, your career, your relationships, your physical body. There's so much that is impacted by infertility. It can be just sort of overwhelming and all-consuming. There's also an increase in problematic thoughts during this time. Going through such a stressful situation increases one's negative thoughts about themselves and about other people. It just comes with the territory. And so this oftentimes leads to a lot of self-judgment, a lot of self-blame, but then can lead to judgment of others as well, perhaps thinking, so-and-so doesn't deserve to be a parent because they don't treat their children well, or they don't appreciate their children, and or even having thoughts about oneself, well, I must not deserve to be a parent if I'm having such a hard time in this, or maybe having guilt of something from the past that you think is now somehow impacting your ability to get pregnant or stay pregnant at this point. And so none of these things are really complete thoughts. They're not taking into account everything that's true, but they are often the thoughts that come to mind and sort of just roll around in one's brain and can lead to additional distress. Finally, I want to share about the rapid cycle of infertility grief. The rapid cycle of infertility grief really correlates with the menstrual cycle. And so this type of grief is very specific to a woman's experience of infertility. And it typically begins with the pain or disappointment of either a negative pregnancy test or a menstrual period beginning. And it can be anywhere from sadness to total devastation. But regardless, that grief or that cycle begins with hurt. And as the menstrual cycle continues and we move into the follicular phase, moving toward ovulation, then there's actually some hope that begins to build. There's some additional encouragement. Perhaps this time things will work out. And so then we have, around 2 weeks into this cycle, then we have the opportunity to try and get pregnant. And then after ovulation, then we have the sort of anticipation and anxiety of what if this didn't work, or what if it did? It's kind of this back and forth, and as we lead to being able to take a pregnancy test or potentially beginning another menstrual period, then a lot of times there is the anxiety of what if. So it's sort of like after ovulation, that anxiety just sort of kind of builds and builds and builds, and then gets to that place where we have that negative pregnancy test, or we have that menstrual period starting, and we start that cycle all over again. And so it is very unique to infertility to go through this cycle month after month, and experience that grief sort of over and over again. Before I get into the specific recommendations and tools, I would like to submit a proposal to you. It's a proposal of hope, and that we would like to, what I hope for you is that you can be hopeful and whole, that you can hold hope for the outcome that you're looking for, or hold hope for a good outcome even if it's not exactly what you were looking for, and at the same time know that you are a whole, complete person now who has intrinsic value and worth. And so that is why my business is named Hopeful and Whole, is because I would like to see women be hopeful for the things that they're looking forward to, and at the same time know that those things do not define them and their worth does not depend upon those things. So if we look at tools and recommendations, I'd like to start with the idea of mindfulness. There are many people I think are kind of confused about what mindfulness is, what it actually means, and it really, at its very basic, it simply means practicing being present. And so we get anxious many times because we are either ruminating on something in the past, or we are obsessing about or worrying about some potential future that we can't even really predict. All we actually have is what's happening right now. And so if we can, as much as possible, exist in this present moment, then it's going to bring down our anxiety a bit, and it is also going to allow us to deal with what is at this point, which just helps us to be healthier people. A couple of ways to do that are mindful breathing, mindful walks, and really reducing self-judgment. So mindful breathing might look like simply paying attention to your breath, just being still for a few moments and paying attention to your breath in and your breath out. You don't have to control your breath, just pay attention to it. Just notice yourself breathing in and then breathing out again. And what helps in doing that is that it really just brings you back into your body. Again, kind of gets you out of your head and into your body, into this moment. Another suggestion is a mindful walk. A mindful walk means, rather than being distracted by, say, headphones and music, or a podcast or something like that, which is great. Those are great for certain times. But if you're really in need of a mindful walk, then what I would recommend is taking that walk and just noticing what you see, noticing what you hear, noticing how you feel, just really paying attention to what's around you. And again, bringing yourself back into the present moment. And the more we do this, the more we're retraining our brain then to be in the now, rather than the anxiety of worrying about the future. And then as far as reducing self-judgment, I think the biggest component of that is reducing the judgment around the emotions that you feel. This is, as I've said, a very stressful and highly emotional time, and you're allowed to have the feelings that you feel. Having those feelings does not mean anything negative about you, and it also doesn't mean that you have to make decisions based on those feelings. A lot of times I hear concern from clients that they are going, if they have the feelings or if they feel the feelings, that's somehow going to rule them or going to lead to them making poor decisions based on their feelings. We get to have our feelings and also know our values and make our decisions based on our values. Those do not have to be the same thing. And in fact, the more we're able to acknowledge our feelings and feel them, the more we're really able to move through them so that we can consider what the best choices are for our life. Next recommendation is to exercise good boundaries. That looks like a lot of different things, and primarily what it looks like while you're trying to conceive or experiencing infertility is, first of all, not feeling as though you owe anybody an explanation about your reproductive life. People might ask questions about when you're going to have kids or where you're at in your fertility journey. If you want to share with them, you can. If you don't want to share with people, you don't have to, and you don't owe anybody an explanation about it. Another way you can exercise good boundaries is by carefully considering your involvement in the lives and events of those who are either pregnant or have children themselves. Now, I always want to caution that isolating yourself from those people might actually be more painful than being connected with them and attending these events like a baby shower or a first birthday party. I always recommend, if you can, remain in relationship, remain in community, even though that might be painful, because it's honestly worse to be isolated. Having said that, there are times where you're just not up to it, where it's just feeling too heavy and too hard to attend one of these events, and that is okay. You don't have to go. And again, you don't have to give explanations. You can if you want to, but you are not obligated to do so. A simple "I can't make it" is enough. Last recommendation is to be gentle with yourself. This is a tough time. You might need extra rest. You probably do. You might need extra care. You probably do. And it is okay for you to take those things, and actually it is a good thing for you to take those things into consideration and really care for yourself well. Be gentle with yourself also means, again, not judging yourself for the feelings that you have in such a challenging time. This last piece can be really, really difficult for a lot of couples to consider, but sometimes being gentle with yourself means taking a break from trying to conceive. It is hard to imagine waiting, I know, when you've already waited so long. What I do want you to consider is that if this works out, if you do conceive and have a child, then you will want to go into parenthood more rested and well prepared. You don't want to go into it completely depleted. In fact, when you are so depleted and you are so stressed, you're likely to make choices for yourself on this journey that really don't align with your values. And so sometimes taking a break, even if it's just for a month, or it could be longer, but sometimes taking that break is what you need to kind of reset and just be yourself for a bit, and then jump back in and make those decisions that you need to make. Last thing I want to say to you is I want to remind you that you have inherent value just as you are today. Your status as a parent, as a mother, your fertility status has no bearing on your value as a human being. You have intrinsic value today, and I want you to remember that if you remember nothing else. Thanks so much for spending time with me. I hope that you have enjoyed this. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.